5 centuries ago, in the shadowy chambers of Florence, a man contemplated human nature with eyes that did not blink before the truth. Niccolò Machiavelli did not invent power. He merely dared to describe it as it is, stripped of the garments of convenient morality. And in that description, he bequeathed us a mirror in which few have the courage to recognize themselves. You look around and wonder why the rich multiply while you divide. Why, regardless of the intensity of your labor, you remain chained to obligations that renew themselves like the seasons. The answer does not lie in cosmic injustice. It lies in your fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of gold. Gli uomini dimenticano più presto la morte del padre che la perdita del patrimonio. Men forget the death of their father more quickly than the loss of their patrimony. When Machiavelli inscribed these words, he was not being cynical. He was being surgical. Money is not a medium of exchange. It is the materialization of power over time, over circumstances, over other men. And power, as he well knew, is never granted. It is conquered. Observe the common man. He rises before the sun, sells his hours, returns exhausted, and calls this an honest life. Machiavelli would recognize him immediately. He is the ideal subject, the one who sustains principalities without ever inhabiting them, not for lack of intelligence or effort, but because of a blindness cultivated since the cradle, the belief that the world rewards virtue with prosperity. Here lies the Florentine's first teaching, the distinction between the world as it should be and the world as it is. In chapter 15 of The Prince, he warns that he who abandons what is done for what should be done learns his ruin rather than his preservation. You were educated in dovere, in duty, in expectation, in hope, but gold does not respond to hopes. It responds to those who understand the real mechanisms of human movement. Money, in its essence, is a weapon. In the hands of those who do not understand its nature, it slips away like water through fingers. In the hands of those who master it, it multiplies like a well-commanded army. There is no neutrality in gold. There is only power exercised or power ceded. And so we arrive at the first law that Machiavelli would recognize instinctively: silence as an instrument of dominion. The vulgar speak to exist. They reveal their fears to seek comfort, their ambitions to seek validation, their weaknesses to seek pity, and in each revelation they surrender positions to the adversary. Machiavelli advised princes to cultivate the appearance of virtues without necessarily possessing them, because he knew that what is shown can be exploited. Silence is not absence. It is concentrated presence. When you are silent, the other speaks. When the other speaks, they reveal. When they reveal, they become readable. And whoever reads without being read occupies an irrevocable position of advantage. Those who accumulate understand this viscerally. They are calm in rooms where others agitate. They do not pursue, they observe. They let the anxiety of others fill the void with concessions, information, vulnerabilities, and then, only then, do they move. But silence alone is an incomplete shield, because even the quiet man, if predictable, can be maneuvered. Consider this: the crowds that fill shopping malls, the masses that follow trends, the millions who react to news with immediate emotion. They are all transmitting, broadcasting their fears, their desires, their weaknesses like radio signals. And predators pick up these signals instantly. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors the bold, but he also knew that boldness without strategy is mere recklessness. The true prince moves with purpose, concealed behind apparent calm. He does not announce his intentions. He does not telegraph his next move. He creates an aura of unpredictability that makes him impossible to counter. This is not deception for its own sake. It is the fundamental architecture of power. The question you must ask yourself now is simple but devastating. How much of your life have you spent revealing when you should have been observing? How many positions have you surrendered simply because you could not endure the discomfort of silence? Machiavelli knew that hiding was only the first step. The true transformation demands something deeper, becoming completely unreadable. What comes next will alter forever how you present yourself to the world. Ognuno vede quello che tu pari. Pochi sentono quello che tu sei. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few perceive what you are. In this sentence, Machiavelli condensed centuries of wisdom about the nature of human perception. The common man moves through the world like an open book. His face announces fear before the threat materializes. His eyes betray greed before the opportunity presents itself. His body proclaims insecurity before any word is spoken. And those who know how to read, the true operators of power, capture these signals like wolves capture the scent of blood. Think of the last time you negotiated something important, a salary, a contract, a significant purchase. Remember how your voice trembled almost imperceptibly, how your eyes revealed anxiety, how your body leaned forward with excessive eagerness. Each of these signals was captured, processed, and used against you, not through malice, but because this is how the game is played. Those who read emotions exploit them. Those who are read become exploited. Machiavelli observed that men in general judge more by their eyes than by their hands. Few touch, but all see. Appearance, therefore, is not superficiality. It is the very terrain where battles are won or lost before they are fought. Becoming unreadable does not mean becoming empty. It means cultivating what the Florentines called sprezzatura, that art of concealing the art of appearing natural in what is meticulously calculated. When you remove emotional signals from your behavior, you are not annihilating yourself. You are withdrawing from the adversary the map of your internal territory. Consider, a man who cannot be read cannot be anticipated. A man who cannot be anticipated cannot be controlled. And a man who cannot be controlled is, in Machiavelli's own words, feared. And fear preserves better than love, because love is maintained by a bond of obligation which, men being perverse, breaks for any personal utility. But fear is maintained by dread of punishment, which never abandons you. This is not about inspiring terror. It is about inhabiting that space where your intentions remain veiled. Advertising, trends, social pressure, all operate on the premise that they can predict your reaction. When you become opaque, these forces lose their foothold. You save while others spend on impulse. You advance while others hesitate out of fear. You retreat while others advance out of blind greed. This brings us to the second principle that Machiavelli embodied, the patience of the conqueror. He spent years in exile, stripped of power, apparently defeated. But in that forced silence, he observed, analyzed, wrote. When others would have surrendered to despair or precipitous action, he waited, not out of passivity, out of calculation. He knew that fortune is like a river that, when it overflows, floods plains, destroys trees and buildings. But when it runs in its normal bed, it can be contained by dikes and channels. The patience of the conqueror is not inaction. It is the refusal to waste strength on premature movement. The vulgar are impulsive. They chase trends at their peak, sell when fear is maximum, buy when euphoria is universal. And in that impulsiveness, they become prey to those who wait. Those who accumulate observe the herd in panic and recognize the moment. They buy when there is blood in the streets, not out of cruelty, but out of understanding that others' fear creates their own discount. They hold when the temptation to realize is maximum. They expand when others retreat. Their patience is not moral virtue, it is tactical advantage. Each time you yield to impulse, each time you react emotionally to market oscillation or the pressure of the moment, you bleed power. And that power does not dissipate, it transfers. It feeds the coffers of the one who waited. The masses will never understand this. They will continue confusing activity with progress, reaction with action, movement with direction. But you are beginning to see the difference. You are beginning to understand that the greatest fortunes were not built by those who moved fastest, but by those who moved at the right moment. Machiavelli understood that patience and silence were necessary defenses. But true conquest demands more. It demands that others become extensions of your will. This is where the real game truly begins. È necessario a un principe, volendosi mantenere, imparare a potere essere non buono. It is necessary for a prince, wishing to maintain himself, to learn how to be able not to be good. Machiavelli was not advising evil. He was describing the anatomy of real power. There is an illusion that keeps multitudes in voluntary servitude, the belief that wealth is born from proportional effort, that hours worked convert linearly into accumulated gold. Machiavelli would recognize this belief for what it is, the myth that allows the prince to sleep peacefully while his subjects exhaust their lives for his benefit. True wealth does not emerge from work. It emerges from positioning. It emerges from occupying that point in the flow where others' effort necessarily passes through your hands. Observe your employer. He does not produce more than you. Frequently, he produces less. But he is positioned above. The value you generate rises. What returns to you descends, diminished. The difference feeds a patrimony you help build without ever inhabiting. This is not accidental injustice, it is architecture. Why do some spend decades working and retire with almost nothing, while others who started at the same point live in abundance? The difference is rarely talent or effort. The difference is positioning, understanding where the flow passes and placing yourself there. Machiavelli observed that men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. He was not insulting humanity. He was describing the field of operations. The majority live so absorbed by immediate necessity that they cannot lift their gaze to perceive the structure that contains them. This is the law of leverage, and it underlies every principality, whether territorial or financial. The landlord who enriches while dozens of tenants work to pay his roof. The investor who multiplies while thousands bet and lose. The corporation that extracts billions from millions who keep buying even while complaining. None of these produce proportionally to what they receive. All are positioned. You were educated to trade hours for coins. But the hour is the only currency that does not multiply, that does not earn interest, that inexorably drains away. While you trade in this perishable currency, others trade in systems. They create positions where time, money, and energy converge in their direction, without them needing to renew the effort. Machiavelli advised the prince to build fortresses, but he also warned that the best fortress is not being hated by the people. Likewise, the best leverage does not look like leverage. It looks like service. It looks like value. It looks like need fulfilled. And while it appears, it works. But even the most ingenious leverage collapses without something to sustain it, because men are, as Machiavelli repeatedly noted, inconstant. They change loyalties like they change clothes. And if you do not anchor them by something deeper than convenience, you will lose what you have built. This brings us to the law of narrative, the most subtle and powerful of princely arts. Colui che inganna troverà sempre chi si lascerà ingannare. He who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Machiavelli was not celebrating deception. He was diagnosing human receptivity to the well-told story. Gold does not flow to the best product. It does not flow to the most dedicated worker. It flows to the best narrative. Men are not creatures of logic, they are creatures of belief. And whoever shapes belief shapes the flow of gold. Why did religions raise cathedrals that defy centuries? Why do brands transform common fabric into objects of desire? Why do leaders mobilize fortunes with words alone? Because they mastered the art of shaping the lens through which multitudes interpret reality. The narrative does not need to correspond to fact. It needs to be believed, and, once accepted, it opens coffers, commands loyalties, moves armies of consumers and workers. Machiavelli knew that building was only half of conquest. The other half was defending against the forces that would inevitably try to destroy what you have raised. And those forces begin within yourself. La fortuna è donna, e è necessario, volendola tener sotto, batterla e urtarla. Fortune is a woman, and it is necessary, wishing to dominate her, to subjugate and confront her. Machiavelli was not speaking of literal violence. He was speaking of the necessity of decisive action against uncertainty. But before confronting external fortune, the prince must subjugate the internal enemy, his own weakness. The path of power demands sacrifice, not of blood, but of comfort. That part of you that seeks immediate gratification, that yearns for approval, that recoils before discomfort, must be subordinated to a superior discipline. Machiavelli observed that men are generally ungrateful, fickle, simulators, cowardly, and greedy for gain. He included himself in this observation, not as condemnation, but as a starting point. Recognizing one's own nature is the first step toward transcending it. Those who accumulate are not immune to impulses. They are trained not to obey them. They appear indulgent because they can, but beneath the surface they cultivate surgical austerity. They control themselves before they presume to control circumstances. This brings us to the most refined weapons. In the Machiavellian arsenal, the law of substitution, the weak trade labor for money, princes trade ideas for others' labor, perception for effort, influence for action. One man digs a ditch and receives a wage. Another organizes 10 men to dig 10 ditches, never touches a shovel, but receives 10 times more. Machiavelli advised never to depend on one's own arms alone. The same law operates in the domains of gold. If you are perpetually substituting your hours for coins, you will remain perpetually dependent on having hours to sell. But if you learn to substitute perception for value, ideas for labor, others' energy for your own gain, you free yourself from the most fundamental servitude. The law of illusion. People do not acquire what something is. They acquire what they believe it is. The diamond is a stone. Paper currency is printed cellulose. The brand is an abstract symbol. But all command fortunes because the illusion surrounding them has been carefully cultivated. Machiavelli declared that everyone sees what you appear to be. You perceive what you are. Appearance is not decoration. It is operative substance. And whoever masters the art of constructing appearances masters the flow of gold. This may sound like a prescription for dishonesty, but Machiavelli was more subtle. He did not advise lying. He advised understanding that truth never operates alone. It operates through perception, interpretation, narrative. The law of exploitation. The word provokes visceral reaction, but in its essence it simply means identifying unused value and capturing it. Those who accumulate see what others do not see. Gaps where there is unmet demand. Fears that create buying opportunities. Inefficiencies that can be arbitraged. Attention wasted that can be monetized. When markets collapse, the vulgar flee in panic. The Prince of Gold observes the panic as information and positions himself to capture what fear forces to be sold at irrational prices. This is not predation. It is the fundamental law of every market. If you do not capture the opportunity, another will. The only question is which side you will be on. Consider this. Every crisis in history has created fortunes for those who maintained clarity when others succumbed to emotion. The Great Depressions, the market crashes, the economic collapses, for those who waited with capital preserved and vision intact, these were not disasters, but opportunities of generational proportion. Machiavelli understood this principle in the context of political power. The same principle applies with identical force to economic power. Fear makes others sell what they should hold. Greed makes others buy what they should avoid. And the prince who dominates his own fear and greed positions himself to benefit from both. Machiavelli gave us the weapons, but even the best weapons are useless in the hands of one who does not know when to wield them and when to sheathe them. What comes now is the most difficult art, the art of containment. Mai si debe cadere nella disperazione. One must never fall into despair. In this simple warning, Machiavelli encapsulated one of the most neglected truths about conquest. It requires conservation as much as expansion. The law of containment is the principle that separates the adventurer from the prince. The adventurer conquers and loses by not knowing how to retain. The prince conquers and multiplies because he understands the value of what is not revealed. The weak believe that total transparency generates trust. They share plans not yet executed. They reveal ambitions not yet consolidated. They expose vulnerabilities in hope of reciprocity. And in each revelation, they surrender positions they will never recover. Machiavelli advised the prince to appear pious, faithful, humane, upright, religious, and to be so in fact when possible, but to keep the spirit disposed in such a way that, being necessary not to be so, he can change to the contrary. Containment is not falsity, it is preservation of options. It is refusing to eliminate paths before it is necessary. In negotiation, the vulgar pour their cards onto the table. They announce their minimum price, their maximum deadline, their urgent needs. And in this pouring, they transfer all power to the other side. The Prince of Gold practices economy of revelation. He offers glimpses, never the complete panorama. He feeds sufficient interest to maintain engagement, never enough to permit complete mapping. And when he finally moves, the adversary discovers he was playing chess, while the prince was waging war. Containment creates mystery. Mystery elevates perceived value. Perceived value commands superior prices in commercial transactions, in social relations, in all economies where human beings exchange scarcity for desire. Note that the wealthiest rarely flaunt. They appear silent, distant, almost inaccessible. They are not hiding weakness. They are protecting position. Exposure is vulnerability. And Machiavelli knew that perceived vulnerability is an invitation to predation. Now we can contemplate the complete system. Silence bends interlocutors because it forces non-reciprocal revelation. Unreadability protects because it removes the footholds of manipulation. Patience transmutes desperation into timing because it allows waiting for the optimal moment. Leverage multiplies because it positions in the flow rather than in the effort. Narrative captures belief because it operates at the level where decisions are really made. Substitution liberates because it trades the perishable currency for the renewable. Illusion amplifies because it recognizes that perception is operationally indistinguishable from reality. Exploitation captures because it sees opportunity where others see only circumstance. Containment preserves because it keeps open the paths of adaptation. Machiavelli never wrote a treatise on wealth, but every page of The Prince pulses with principles that accumulators of gold practice intuitively, because territorial power and financial power obey the same laws of human nature. The same forces that allowed the Medici to dominate Florence allow modern dynasties to dominate global markets. The scale changes. The principles remain. You are beginning to see patterns where before you saw only chaos, connections where before you saw only coincidence, structure where before you saw only randomness. This is not paranoia, it is clarity. The clarity that comes when the veils of comfortable illusion are lifted. Most will never reach this point. They prefer the comfort of believing that the world is fair, that hard work is always rewarded, that good intentions guarantee good results. You have chosen to see differently. You have absorbed the principles. But a principle not practiced is intellectual ornament. What remains now is the transmutation, transforming understanding into action, knowledge into daily practice, theory into empire. Io non mi vergogno di ragionare di questa materia, perché io so che molti ne hanno ragionato. I am not ashamed to reason about this matter, because I know that many have reasoned about it. Thus Machiavelli justified his audacity in writing about power, when so many before him had written. His contribution was not the theme. It was the courage to treat it as it really was. You have absorbed principles that have operated for millennia. Silence, unreadability, patience, leverage, narrative, substitution, illusion, exploitation, containment. These are not innovations. They are distillations of how power has always worked. The only question that remains is whether they will remain as inert knowledge or whether they will transmute into living practice. Machiavelli wrote The Prince in Exile, deprived of power, apparently defeated. But in that treatise he deposited a legacy that survived all the princes of his time, because he understood that transmitted knowledge is power multiplied through generations. In conversation, practice the economy of words. Each phrase you pronounce should have purpose, to inform without revealing, to engage without compromising, to create interest without satisfying it completely. When others speak to fill the void, you observe. Each hesitation, each contradiction, each emotional leak transforms into useful data. Over time, you will perceive that people expose themselves voluntarily to relieve the tension of your silence. In negotiation, cultivate opacity. The vulgar negotiate to win, they argue, press, try to convince. But negotiation is war conducted by other means, and in war the calm soldier always prevails over the frantic. Do not demonstrate enthusiasm. It reveals how much you are willing to pay. Do not demonstrate urgency. It reveals how much you can be pressured. Wait, observe. Let the other side expose their positions. And when you move in a way that makes the conclusion seem inevitable rather than forced. In relationships, apply controlled gravity. The majority destroy their influence through excess availability. They are always present, always respond, always accommodate. And in that omnipresence, they become landscape, visible but ignored. You will cultivate the opposite. Calibrated presence. dosed access, graduated revelation, not through calculated manipulation, but through understanding that human value, like all value, derives in part from scarcity. In business, build narratives before building products. The vulgar sell features, specifications, logical arguments, but the purchase decision is rarely logical. It is emotional, coated with posterior justification. Do not sell the object. Sell what the person will become upon possessing it. Do not sell functionality. Sell the identity that functionality will allow them to project. The great commercial empires do not sell superior products. They sell irresistible stories about who you are when you choose them. In conflict, choose battles as the general chooses terrain. The vulgar fight every provocation, defend every criticism, prove every contested point, and in that dispersion they exhaust themselves while rested adversaries wait. The Prince of Gold refuses most combats. He observes. He lets adversaries expose themselves, burn energy, reveal strategies, and when he finally acts, he acts where victory is already essentially decided. And so, gradually, without announcement, the eyes, transmutation occurs. You notice that while others pursue immediate comfort, you choose the discipline of deferment. While others reveal to seek validation, you withhold to preserve options. While others react to the panic of the moment, you observe panic as information. You are no longer one of them. Not because you have become superior in some moral sense. Machiavelli never claimed moral superiority for his princes, but because you have crossed a threshold of understanding that the majority refuse to cross. They prefer the comfort of illusions about justice and merit. You preferred the uncomfortable clarity about how the world really operates. Machiavelli would call this virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but that quality of strength, adaptability, and determination that allows a man to shape circumstances instead of being shaped by them. The Stoics would call it apatheia, not apathy, but that inner freedom that emerges when impulses cease to command actions. I call it the mind of the prince, the mind that understands the gears without deluding itself about their nature. That operates with efficacy without needing approval. That accumulates without needing to flaunt. That conquers without needing to be recognized. The majority will never see what you now see. They will remain blind, reactive, driven by forces they do not even perceive, not because they are inferior, because they have chosen the comfort of ignorance. You have made another choice. Machiavelli dedicated the prince to Lorenzo de' Medici, but he wrote for posterity. He knew that the true recipients of his wisdom would be those in future generations who had eyes to see and courage to apply. You are one of those recipients. The question that remains is not whether you understood. Clearly you understood, or you would not have arrived here. The question is whether you will remain in contemplation, or whether you will cross into action, whether you will let this knowledge settle as intellectual curiosity, or whether you will transmute it into daily practice. The Florentine observed that there is no greater difficulty than introducing a new order of things, because the innovator has as enemies all those who prospered in the old order. You are introducing a new order in your own life. There will be resistance, internal and external, old habits that will insist on perpetuating themselves, people who benefited from your predictability and who will resist your transformation. But Machiavelli also noted that fortune favors the bold, and boldness here is not recklessness. It is the willingness to act according to superior understanding when the majority remain paralyzed in comfortable patterns. Non si debba mai fuggire il male perché sospinto dalla fortuna, né mai gettarsi in preda alla fortuna credendola buona. One should never flee evil pushed by fortune, nor ever throw oneself prey to fortune believing it good. Fortune is neither good nor bad. It is mutable, and the prince of territory or of gold is the one who adapts to its changes while others are dragged by them. You have absorbed the teachings of the Florentine filtered through 5 centuries of application. The rest belongs to you. The final question remains, will you contemplate or will you conquer? If what you have seen here has awakened something within you, if you feel ready to continue this journey of transformation, then leave your mark, like and comment, even anonymously if you prefer, because each interaction strengthens this community of observers, this invisible brotherhood of those who chose to see. Subscribe, because this is not the end but the beginning. There is much more to explore, many more veils to be lifted, many more strategies to be mastered. Fortune, as Machiavelli knew, favors those who are prepared when the moment arrives. Prepare yourself, your time approaches. È meglio essere impetuoso che rispettivo, perché la fortuna è donna, ed è necessario, volendola, tener sotto, batterla e urtarla. Niccolò Machiavelli, Il Principe. Chapter 20. The prince does not beg for approval, but he recognizes allies. If you are one of us, if you chose to see what others refuse to see, then make yourself known. Subscribe to join this invisible brotherhood. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your questions, your insights, and like this video to signal that you are ready for more. The journey has just begun.